25. Famous faces who died in front of audiences you'd never recognize today. Some famous lives didn't end behind closed doors. They ended in front of cameras, crowds, or stunned witnesses. From shocking accidents to unforgettable final moments, these 20 celebrities died in ways the public could never erase from memory. Subscribe to Hollywood Legends Remembered and discover the final chapters Hollywood rarely talks about. Mitsuharu Misawa. On June 13, 2009, Mitsuharu Misawa walked into Hiroshima Green Arena for a tag team match that Japanese wrestling fans expected to be intense, physical, and dramatic. He was teaming with Go Shiozaki against Akitoshi Saito and Bison Smith. By then, Misawa was already a legend, the founder of Pro Wrestling Noah, a former All Japan star and one of the most respected wrestlers of his generation. During the match, Saito delivered a back suplex. Misawa landed hard, stayed down, and did not respond. At first, the crowd could not understand what they were seeing. Wrestling had trained them to expect pain, silence, and sudden reversals. Can you imagine watching the ring and slowly realizing this was no longer part of the performance? The referee stopped the match as wrestlers, officials, and medical staff rushed in. CPR was performed before Misawa was taken to Hiroshima University Hospital. He was pronounced dead later that night at 46, with reports linking his death to a catastrophic cervical spinal injury. Karl Wallenda. Karl Wallenda was high above San Juan, Puerto Rico, when the wire between two towers of the Condado Plaza Hotel began to sway beneath him. At 73, the legendary patriarch of the Flying Wallendas was still performing the dangerous high-wire walks that had made his family famous around the world. The March 22, 1978 stunt was intended to promote an upcoming circus appearance, but strong coastal winds made the crossing increasingly difficult. Wallenda had spent decades performing at extraordinary heights, often without a safety net. Witnesses watched as he lowered his body and struggled to control his balancing pole while the wind continued pushing against him. Can you imagine standing below and watching a legendary performer fight for balance, then realizing he was genuinely losing control? Moments later, Wallenda fell from the wire. He was taken to a hospital but was pronounced dead at 73. What was meant to demonstrate that he could still master the high wire instead became his final performance, witnessed by spectators watching from below. Valencia Prime. The stage lights at Taboo Lounge were still shining when Valencia Prime's performance suddenly came to an unexpected stop. At only 25, she had already become a familiar and beloved figure in Philadelphia's drag community, proudly calling herself Philadelphia's plus-size dancing diva. Her appearances at Taboo Lounge and Sports Bar were known for confidence, humor, movement, and an energy that connected easily with the crowd. During a performance in September 2022, Prime suddenly collapsed on stage. What had been an ordinary night of music and entertainment changed within seconds as people nearby realized something was seriously wrong and rushed to help. Can you imagine watching someone fill a room with energy, then suddenly seeing the entire atmosphere change into fear and confusion? Emergency responders arrived, but Prime was later pronounced dead. The Philadelphia Medical Examiner determined that she died from atherosclerotic cardiovascular disease and classified her death as natural. Her sudden passing, Philadelphia's LGBTQ+ and drag communities, where friends and fellow performers remembered her for the warmth and joy she brought whenever she stepped onto a stage. Krishna Kumar Kunnath. The last notes at Nazrul Mancha carried the emotion KK had shared with Indian listeners for years. On May 31, 2022, Krishna Kumar Kunnath, known simply as KK, performed in Kolkata after building a career on playback songs, college nostalgia, and a voice that made heartbreak feel deeply personal. KK did not die on stage. After the concert ended, he returned to his hotel, said he was feeling unwell, and later collapsed. That distinction matters because the tragedy still unfolded within hours of the performance while the energy of the night was barely over. Can you imagine leaving a concert still hearing the applause, then learning that the singer everyone had just celebrated was suddenly fighting for his life? KK was taken to Calcutta Medical Research Institute, where doctors pronounced him dead. He was 53. A post-mortem later pointed to a heart attack, leaving fans across India grieving a singer whose voice had accompanied memories of youth, love, and loss. Costa Titch. Costa Titch brought his energy to the Ultra South Africa stage in Johannesburg, moving with the speed and intensity that had made him one of the country's rising music stars. Born Constantinos Tsobanoglo, he built his name as a rapper, dancer, and amapiano performer with tracks such as Big Flexa, reaching audiences beyond South Africa. He was 28 when the concert became his last appearance. During the set, Costa collapsed, managed to stand again, and attempted to continue performing. Moments later, he fell a second time as people rushed toward him. What had been a night of lights, movement, and music became an emergency. Can you imagine seeing a performer get back up only to realize seconds later that something was wrong? Costa Titch died after the collapse. In 2024, his family said the post-mortem found significant strain on his heart compounded by stress and fatigue, likely leading to an irregular heartbeat and fatal seizure. Brancheau. Guests were still seated around the pool at SeaWorld Orlando when Brancheau remained beside Telecom following a Dine with Shamu performance. Brancheau was one of SeaWorld's most experienced orca trainers, respected for her years of work with the animals and familiar to many visitors who had watched her perform. What looked like another routine interaction suddenly became an emergency. Telecom pulled Brancheau into the water, and people nearby quickly realized they were no longer watching part of a show. Staff members moved to respond as the atmosphere around the pool changed from entertainment to a desperate rescue effort. Can you imagine sitting only a short distance from the water and realizing that the danger unfolding in front of you was completely real? Brancheau died on February 24, 2010, at the age of 40. The medical examiner listed drowning and blunt force trauma as the cause of death. The incident later became a major focus of debate over trainer safety keeping orcas in captivity and SeaWorld's practices. Dimebag Darrell Abbott. The opening song had barely begun at Alrosa Villa when a metal show became a scene of terror. Darrell Dimebag Abbott, the former Pantera guitarist whose unmistakable riffs had influenced a generation of heavy metal players, was performing with Damage Plan in Columbus, Ohio on December 8, 2004. Fans were crowded close to the stage, expecting a night from one of metal's most recognizable guitarists. Without warning, a gunman climbed onto the stage and began shooting. For several terrifying moments, many people in the club struggled to understand what they were seeing, as music gave way to screaming and confusion. Can you imagine arriving to watch one of your favorite guitarists, then suddenly realizing the violence in front of you was real? Abbott was killed at 38 along with Jeff Thompson, Nathan Bray, and Aaron Halk. Columbus police officer James Niggemeyer shot and killed the attacker, ending the rampage. A concert that had begun with roaring guitars became one of the most devastating nights in rock history. Richard Versalle. A tall ladder stood against the file cabinets in the opening scene of the Macropolis case at the Metropolitan Opera. Richard Versalle, an American tenor known for demanding Wagner roles, was playing Vitek, a law clerk, during the Met's first production of Leos Janáček's opera on January 5, 1996. Only minutes into the performance, he climbed the ladder as part of the staging and sang a line about how long a person can live. Then his body suddenly gave way. Can you imagine sitting in an opera house and not knowing whether a fall was theater or a real medical emergency? Versalle fell to the stage after suffering an apparent heart attack. The performance was stopped and he was taken to St. Luke's Roosevelt Hospital, where he was pronounced dead. He was 63. The opera's story was already about time aging and unnatural life, which made his final moment feel painfully impossible to separate from the scene around him. Nick Menza. The drums were still ringing through the baked potato when Nick Menza suddenly collapsed behind his kit. The former Megadeth drummer was performing with OHM at the Intimate Studio City Club in Los Angeles on May 21, 2016, close enough for the audience to feel every strike. Menza had been a crucial part of Megadeth's celebrated 1990s lineup, appearing on Rust in Peace Countdown to Extinction, Euthanasia, and Cryptic Writings. The band was reportedly only 3 songs into the set when Menza fell. For a moment, the room was filled with confusion as the drummer who had controlled the rhythm seconds earlier was suddenly motionless behind the kit. Can you imagine hearing a live band abruptly lose its heartbeat, then realizing the drummer was experiencing a real emergency? Paramedics attempted to revive Menza, but he could not be saved. He was 51. What had begun as another small club performance became his final appearance, leaving longtime fans and the metal community stunned. Sib Hashian. The Legends of Rock cruise was built around nostalgia, but one performance in March 2017 ended in shock. Sib Hashian, the former drummer of Boston, was playing live aboard the ship when he suddenly collapsed behind his drum kit. Decades earlier, his powerful drumming had helped define Boston's hugely successful 1976 debut album, including More Than a Feeling, and he later appeared on the band's second album, Don't Look Back. At 67. Hashian was still performing for audiences who had grown up with the arena rock sound Boston helped make famous. Surrounded by fellow musicians and longtime fans, the cruise had been meant as a celebration of classic rock, rather than a place anyone expected tragedy. Can you imagine watching a familiar rock drummer keep the rhythm going, then realizing the music had stopped because something was seriously wrong? According to his family, Hashian died after collapsing during the performance. What began as another nostalgic concert at sea suddenly became his final appearance, leaving fans and musicians aboard the cruise stunned. J.I. Rodale. The studio couch on the Dick Cavett Show seemed ordinary until J.I. Rodale suddenly became unresponsive. Rodale was a publisher, writer, and champion of organic farming whose work helped popularize natural food and healthier living in America. During a June 8, 1971 taping in New York, his interview had already ended and he stayed seated while Cavett spoke with journalist Pete Hamill. Then Rodale made an unusual snoring sound and slumped forward. The episode was never aired. Can you imagine sitting in that studio laughing only moments earlier, then seeing doctors rush toward the stage? Medical personnel tried to revive Rodale, but their efforts failed. He was pronounced dead at Roosevelt Hospital at 72. Later accounts sometimes added dramatic claims about what he had said beforehand. But the confirmed story is striking enough. A man closely associated with health and longevity died during a television taping beneath studio lights with the cameras still rolling. Colonel Bruce Hampton. Colonel Bruce Hampton's 70th birthday celebration at Atlanta's Fox Theater unexpectedly became his final night on stage. Billed as Hampton 70, the concert brought together musicians from across the jam band community to honor a performer widely regarded as one of the scene's most eccentric and influential figures. Hampton had fronted groups such as Hampton Grease Band and helped inspire generations of adventurous Southern musicians. Late in the show, Hampton joined the ensemble for Turn On Your Love Light. During the song, he sank to his knees beside a speaker. Because of his famously unpredictable stage presence, several people initially assumed the moment was simply another part of the performance. Can you imagine attending a birthday tribute and then realizing the man being celebrated was actually in serious trouble? Hampton collapsed on May 1, 2017, and died soon afterward at 70. What began as a joyful tribute ended as his final performance with friends, fellow musicians, and fans surrounding him that night. Dick Shawn. Dick Shawn lay completely still on stage at UC San Diego, and at first the audience had little reason to believe anything was wrong. The American comedian and actor known for It's a Mad, 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 Mad World and Mel Brooks's The Producers was performing on April 17, 1987. His comedy frequently relied on unpredictable movements, long pauses, and absurd physical routines, making his sudden collapse look like another part of the act. For several minutes, some audience members continued laughing and even called out jokes while Shawn remained motionless. Eventually, concern replaced amusement, and a doctor from the crowd came forward to examine him. Can you imagine watching a comedian lie still on stage only to realize that the silence was no longer part of the performance? CPR was attempted before Shawn was transported to Scripps Memorial Hospital in La Jolla. He was pronounced dead at 63 after suffering a heart attack. The circumstances made his final performance especially unsettling. The comedy had ended, but for several moments almost no one in the room knew it. Tommy Cooper. Tommy Cooper's red fez, oversized cloak, and deliberately clumsy timing had made audiences expect almost anything from him. On April 15, 1984, The Welsh comedian and magician was appearing on ITV's Live from Her Majesty's at Her Majesty's Theatre in London, performing before a packed audience and millions watching at home. Because Cooper's comedy often depended on tricks going wrong, what happened next initially seemed perfectly normal. During his routine, Cooper suddenly collapsed on stage. For several seconds, the audience continued laughing, believing the fall was another part of the act. Only as he remained motionless did the mood begin to change. Can you imagine laughing at a comedian's collapse, then slowly realizing that this time it was not part of the performance? Crew members and medical personnel quickly understood that Cooper was suffering a genuine emergency. He had experienced a heart attack. The television broadcast moved away from the scene while attempts were made to help him, and Cooper was taken to Westminster Hospital. He was pronounced dead at 63. His final appearance became especially haunting because laughter continued briefly after the comedy had already turned into reality. Owen Hart. Owen Hart entered Over the Edge as the Blue Blazer, a comic superhero character whose entrance was supposed to be part of the spectacle. The 34-year-old Canadian wrestler, a member of the famous Hart family, was preparing to descend from the rafters of Kansas City's Kemper Arena before an Intercontinental Championship match. The entrance failed before Hart ever reached the ring. His safety system released while he was still high above the arena, and he fell into the ring area below. Television viewers did not see the fall because a pre-recorded video was playing, but thousands inside the building witnessed the sudden emergency as medical personnel rushed toward him. Can you imagine watching what seemed like another wrestling stunt and then realizing within seconds that something had gone terribly wrong? Hart was transported to Truman Medical Center, where he was pronounced dead. His death was attributed to internal bleeding caused by blunt force trauma. The event controversially continued afterward, making his final entrance one of professional wrestling's most painful and debated tragedies in front of fans. Irma Bule. A live cobra moved across the stage near Irma Bule as the dangdut music continued. The Indonesian singer was performing in Karawang, West Java in April 2016, and live snakes had become part of an act she had used before. During the show, she reportedly stepped on the cobra's tail, causing it to bite her on the thigh. Believing the snake had been defanged or otherwise made harmless, Irma chose to keep performing instead of seeking treatment immediately. For roughly 45 minutes, she continued singing while the venom took effect. Her condition then worsened rapidly. Witnesses reported that she began vomiting, suffered seizures, and eventually collapsed in front of the crowd before a stunned audience. Can you imagine watching the performance continue without realizing that the singer had already received a potentially fatal bite? Irma was rushed for medical treatment, but she died soon afterward. She was 29. What began as a familiar stage routine ended as a fatal accident, exposing the danger of using live venomous animals as entertainment. Tiny Tim. A ukulele and the unmistakable sound of Tiptoe Through the Tulips had followed Tiny Tim for decades. Born Herbert Corey, the American singer, became a pop culture curiosity in 1968, when his high falsetto long hair and unusual stage manner turned the old song into an unexpected hit. By 1996, however, his health had become increasingly fragile after serious heart problems earlier that year. On November 30th, Tiny Tim appeared at a benefit for the Women's Club of Minneapolis. Although he told his wife Susan that he was feeling unwell, he chose to perform rather than disappoint the audience. While singing his signature song, he suddenly stopped, attempted to leave the stage, and collapsed before stunned witnesses. Can you imagine applauding a familiar song, then realizing the performer in front of you was experiencing a real medical emergency? Tiny Tim was rushed to Hennepin County Medical Center, where he died that night at 64. Reports described cardiac arrest as the apparent cause, bringing his extraordinary performing career to an abrupt end. Barbara Weldens. Barbara Weldens was known for performing barefoot, giving her concerts a feeling that was close, vulnerable, and direct. In July 2017, the French singer-songwriter appeared at the festival Léo Ferré in Gourdon, southwest France, inside the Church of Notre-Dame des Cordeliers. She was 35 and had released her debut album Le Grand H de l'Homme only months earlier, earning growing attention for her work. During the performance, Weldens suddenly fell to the floor before the audience. Initial reports pointed to a possible electrical problem, and an autopsy later confirmed that electrocution had caused her death. Roughly 200 people were reportedly inside the venue while no one else was injured. Can you imagine watching an intimate church concert, then realizing the performer's sudden collapse was not part of the show? Emergency efforts were unable to save Weldens. Her death ended a promising career just as wider recognition was beginning to reach her. Perro Aguayo Jr. Perro Aguayo Jr. lay draped over the middle rope as the match continued around him, and slowly the atmosphere inside the arena began to change. Known throughout Mexico as El Hijo del Perro Aguayo, Pedro Aguayo Ramirez had become one of Lucha Libre's stars, carrying his father's celebrated name while building a fierce reputation of his own. In March 2015, he was wrestling in Tijuana, partnering with Monik against Rey Mysterio Jr. and Extreme Tiger. After an exchange near the ropes, Aguayo became unresponsive. The match continued briefly because the seriousness of what had happened was not immediately understood. Around him, wrestlers kept moving while Aguayo remained motionless against the ropes. What would go through your mind if you saw a wrestler stop moving while everyone around him still believed the match could continue? Aguayo was rushed to a nearby hospital where he was pronounced dead at 35. Later reports connected his death to severe cervical trauma, turning that final match into one of Lucha Libre's darkest nights. Leslie Harvey. A routine microphone check at Swansea's top-ranked suite concealed a danger no one in the venue expected. Leslie Les Harvey, the Scottish guitarist and co-founder of Stone the Crows, was preparing to play with the band on May 3, 1972. At 27, he had already built a reputation in British blues rock beside singer Maggie Bell, with the group connected to manager Peter Grant. During the show, Harvey reportedly touched an ungrounded microphone while holding his electric guitar. The resulting electrical shock struck him in front of the crowd, instantly turning the performance into an emergency. People nearby tried to help, and some reports say others received shocks as well. Can you imagine seeing a musician reach toward a microphone, then realizing something on stage had suddenly become lethal? Harvey was rushed for treatment but was pronounced dead on arrival. His death became a grim reminder of how dangerous faulty electrical equipment could be for musicians performing live. Jane Little. Jane Little spent more than 7 decades standing behind a double bass that was taller than she was. She entered the youth orchestra that became the Atlanta Symphony Orchestra in 1945 at just 16, eventually earning recognition from Guinness World Records for the longest career with one orchestra. Even in 2016 at 87 and receiving treatment for multiple myeloma, Little continued taking her place on stage. During an Atlanta Symphony Pops program devoted to Broadway's Golden Age, the musicians moved into the encore Irving Berlin's There's No Business Like Show Business. In the middle of the performance, Little suddenly collapsed beside her instrument. Can you imagine dedicating nearly your entire life to one orchestra only for your final moments to unfold while the music was still playing? Medical responders managed to revive her briefly before she was transported to Grady Memorial Hospital, where she later died. The concert became the final chapter of a 71-year performing career. Onie Wheeler. Onie Wheeler brought a lifetime of country, gospel, bluegrass, and rockabilly experience to the Grand Ole Opry stage. The Missouri musician was known for singing guitar and harmonica, and his career included recordings for Columbia and Sun Records. He also worked with Roy Acuff's Smoky Mountain Boys, placing him close to some of Nashville's most enduring traditions. In May 1984, Wheeler appeared during a taping associated with Reverend Jimmy Snow's Grand Ole Gospel Time. As he performed a hymn before the audience, the 62-year-old musician suddenly collapsed on stage, turning an ordinary gospel performance into a frightening emergency. What would go through your mind if a familiar song suddenly stopped and the performer fell before the crowd? Wheeler was rushed to a Nashville hospital, but he did not survive. After decades spent performing country and gospel music, his final public appearance ended on the same Opry stage that had long been part of his professional world for many years. Mike Scaccia. A birthday concert for rigor mortis vocalist Bruce Corbett brought Mike Scaccia onto a Fort Worth stage once again, surrounded by friends, metal fans, and the music that had shaped his career. Scaccia was widely known for his work with rigor mortis and Ministry, where his fierce guitar style helped drive the heavier sound heard during Ministry's Psalm 69 period. On December 22, 2012, at the Rail Club, the celebration suddenly became an emergency. While performing, Scaccia collapsed on stage. Initial reports mentioned a possible seizure, but later accounts said he had suffered a heart attack connected to heart disease. Can you imagine hearing the band at full force, then realizing that the sudden silence was not part of the show? Scaccia was pronounced dead at 47. A night created to celebrate one musician unexpectedly became another musician's final performance, leaving friends, fans, and the metal community in shock. Mark Sandman. Mark Sandman gave morphine its unmistakable identity with a two-string slide bass and a voice that sounded weary and hypnotic. As the group's singer-bassist and principal songwriter, he helped shape a sparse Boston sound built from bass drums and Dana Colley's baritone saxophone, earning morphine a following through the 1990s. In July 1999, the band took the stage at a festival in Palestrina, Italy. During the performance, Sandman suddenly collapsed. He was 46. What had begun as another concert quickly turned into an emergency as the music stopped and people near the stage realized he was in trouble. Can you imagine watching a musician perform normally only to see everything change within seconds? Sandman died of a heart attack. Morphine never truly continued without him, and his final appearance became inseparable from the band's history, marking the abrupt end of one of alternative rock's most distinctive voices.